Holy God, I am so sorry. I've just been having all these issues with technical stuff, but whatever, we're here now. Hello, welcome back to Slightly Twisted Female. I'm your host, Brittany Rue. Welcome back to another episode of What in the Fuck is Going On? Today we are going to be focusing on trans-identified females giving birth, or trans men. So for those of you who don't know, on November 3rd, we actually just got issued our permit, so it's official. We are live and litty and ready to protest the American College of Obstetrician Gynecologists, they're basically a non-profit organization who sort of compiles the research and puts out bulletins for obstetric practice and gynecological practice, and it sort of sets the standards of care for the United States, and a lot of OBs have to be in compliance with ACOG recommendations so that they can receive certain federal funding and other things like that, even though it's technically a non-government organization. For those who have not had a chance to do so, listen to my ACOG stream. It's a 2-part stream. Both parts are important. It gives a little bit of the history of obstetrics as a medical practice and sort of what ACOG does, and and then we also go through their current position on the trans thing. So just to give a little overview, ACOG says it is obviously pro-trans. They, promote the changing of language to be inclusive. And we know when we say things like inclusive language, it's typically exclusionary to women who are the sole sort of recipients of obstetrical care, believe it or not. They're also pushing that gynecologists who have been historically male, so obstetrician gynecologists have been historically male. It was sort of a male profession that took birthing out of the hands of female midwives, so in the 1930s. So the specialty of obstetrics really developed in the mid to later 19th century. So in the 1800s, that's when they started focusing and finding interest in the pregnant female body, these medical doctors, and then they started to do these gynecological experiments. We know most notably on some black enslaved women, or I think like indentured women, sharecroppers, things like that. Really horrific stuff. And that's sort of the basis of gynecology in this country. And then in terms of obstetrics, has a long sordid history of separating out the woman as a human being and sort of her body parts. So they look at things, like the uterus and the fetus, and we've gone through some really, really scary phases of obstetrical development as a specialty, from developing forceps, which were like salad tongs that they, up until pretty recently, up until like the 80s, and I think some people still actually use them, would secure around the fetus's head during second stage of labor and yank the baby through the mother's vaginal canal. And to get these forceps to fit, these metal forceps, I mean, this is where a lot of palsies were happening because of spinal cord damage from pulling the baby out. You don't need to pull a baby out like that. And if they would cut an episiotomy in the perineum of a woman, which goes through several layers of muscle, which a lot of these women who were cut in this way, rather than allowing either natural tearing from pushing, because typically our bodies, if they must tear, the natural tear is almost always more minor and safer and better for the woman than an unnatural cut, which cuts through several layers of muscles, and the pelvic floor causes pelvic floor dysfunction, incontinence, sexual dysfunction, just so many issues. We had the scopolamine era with Twilight sleep, which is when this was like in the 50s. They were putting women under this really intense sort of, that would give them anesthesia. And so, it was like, I'm sorry, amnesia. What I'm saying, I'm like mixing amnesia. And it was, I guess, one of the first ways to sort of manage the pain of childbirth, which again, birthing in a hospital, you have heightened cortisol levels, stress hormones that make your perception of pain so much stronger, right? It's easier for a doctor when you lay on your back and you sit still, and that's very painful for a woman because we've evolved to have very large brains, and to have large brains, to accommodate that, we have very large heads relative to the rest of our bodies. Babies have massive heads relative to the rest of their bodies. And so to fit through the female pelvis, which is larger than the male android pelvis, the gynecoid pelvis, the baby's heads have to sort of corkscrew down through the female pelvic outlet. And for this to be easy and feasible, a mother has to be able to move around. So a mom has to be able to, when in like midwifery circles, we tell moms, you have to be able to move, and you have to be able to get down and go like this, and just rock back and forth and all this sort of stuff. And when you have a mom supine laying on her back, what just happened? When we have a mother who's supine laying on her back, the fuck? What computer is attempting? Huh. Oh, okay, here we go. Sorry, am I back? Oh, it disconnected for a second. My bad. When we have, it's so much easier for male doctors. So when a woman lies on her back with her legs up in stirrups, that's easier. But it's infinitely more painful for a mom to be like this, right? When you could just sit down and not have to chase her around, okay, that's painful. So then their first trial of pain management was something called scopolamine, which would literally it would give them amnesia. Hold on. Sorry, I'm getting all these Norton. I hope that's not an actual... No. Hold on, let me block this. Deny all connections to this service. Save. Sorry, it looks like somebody's trying to access my computer. Fuck. Hold on. My Norton is letting me know that someone's trying to get to my computer. Okay. That's interesting. So I'm just gonna let it fix it. Thank God I have my Norton spyware. Can you guys still hear me? Okay, anyway. So it's just a long sordid history. It's important to learn about. So it does not shock or surprise me that ACOG, the American Congress of Obstetrician Gynecologists, who are the the sort of overseeing body of this specialty, continues to see women as sort of a non-factor in their care. They've never been woman-centered, to the point when I was working in birth work, we've had issues with, there was hashtag I Stand With Julie, a woman whose obstetrician had actually gone to the court and secured an order from the court to force this woman to have a cesarean section. We've seen women literally handcuffed to the bed, and because they were refusing things like a cesarean section, or they were refusing certain interventions with their birth. And one thing about these OBs, and I'll tell you, they don't like to be told no. It is very rape culture. They don't like to be told no. That's like a whole other topic, honestly. It's horrifying, and I could really go into it, and I really call on feminists to start taking birth justice up as an issue. And birth is not a medical event. it is a physiological event. It is a normal physiological process that our bodies go through. A lot of the sort of hype and fear mongering around birth puts women at, it's why they end up delivering themselves to surgeons, because all obstetricians are surgeons. Every single obstetrician is a surgeon, and when they're looking at you through a surgical lens, the chances that you're going to end up in the operating room are pretty high. And they're pathologists. They're looking for pathology in what is a normal birth process. And we know that when you interfere with one part of this very complex process, they'll interfere early on, and then it leads to a cascade of events where everything starts to all get fucked up. And then later they're like, oh my God, we gotta cut your baby out to save your life. And they're like, oh my God, And then later it's like, wow, we really saved you. We saved you and your baby. And these women are telling the stories who just don't know better. And like, oh, thank God I would have died. Me and my baby would have died in childbirth if it wasn't, and unfortunately the answer, the truth is that no, had they not fucked with the process in the first place, these are iatrogenic problems, okay? And I say all of this to say the fact that they are, complicit and working together with gender ideology, which, also sees women as irrelevant, that sees female bodies as just sort of a collection of body parts that are divorced and, not in a sort of holistic conjunction with the woman herself, is of absolutely no surprise to me whatsoever. So, we're going to continue to talk about ACOG's position. So our protest and our demand is that ACOG, the American College of Obstetrician Gynecologists, divest itself of gender ideology, or else we demand that the U.S. Maternal care system divest itself of ACOG if ACOG refuses to divest itself of gender ideology. One of the most horrific things that is talked about in the bulletin released from ACOG about transgender care, maternity care, is saying that obstetricians have a responsibility to help connect their patients with transition care. Now, let me clarify. ACOG deals with obstetricians and gynecologists. Obstetricians deal with pregnant women. Only women can get pregnant, okay? And only females are women and mothers are females. Every mother is a female. The mother is female, #mother is female. That's our official hashtag for the protest. Gynecologists deal with general non-pregnant female care, okay? So it deals with the sexual and reproductive organs and body parts of a woman, and the sexual reproductive well-being and healthcare of a woman who is not pregnant, who is in a non-pregnant state. So my question is, why in the hell would an obstetrician who deals with only pregnant women have any need to refer patients to transgender transition care? Riddle me that. There is also, and I need to find it, there's been recently a paper published saying that trans-identified females can safely continue their hormone therapy, their testosterone drug use, or abuse, I should say, because this is drug abuse. Okay, this is not medicine, this is drug abuse during pregnancy. And it's not like we don't know, because we have years and years of medical literature about something called polycystic ovarian syndrome that causes elevated levels of testosterone in women with PCOS. So we know that these women experience highly elevated rates of miscarriage, spontaneous abortion. We know that their babies are at risk of structural abnormalities and maldevelopments. So no, we know that testosterone is a teratogen, and a teratogen is any compound chemical that causes structural malformation in the developing fetus. So how could you, in good faith, recommend that pregnant women continue to take a known and serious teratogen during pregnancy? It is unbelievable. Nurse Ratchet says, what about trans couples? They're still having heterosexual sex. Yeah, that's a great lead into our current topic, Danny Wakefield. Danny Wakefield. This is the trans man who at 38 gave birth to a baby girl. And let's take a look what Danny Wakefield has to say about fatherhood. And please notice just the typical, it's funny because despite being a trans-identified female, despite how she wants to identify or what she calls herself or what pronouns she uses, still she had female consequences when it came to sex. She might consider herself a gay man, but I'll tell you that no gay man has ever had the consequence of pregnancy from having gay sex. She had a female consequence, and that's literally the point, and that's the thing that we need to remember. Gender, which is all built off of our sexual dimorphism and whether or not that's legitimate, our sexed bodies are rooted in our reproduction. It's like we forget that, because now we have so many more means to control our reproduction. It is based in our reproduction. That's why we are sexually dimorphic. That's why we have two phenotypical layouts. That's why we have males and females. It is for sexual reproduction. Okay, so when she engaged in heterosexual sex that she considered gay sex, surprise, surprise, she wound up pregnant 2 months later. And it's like, wow. And my question is, it's two things. It's either, was she so delusional and so affirmed? Again, we're taking these mentally ill women and we're affirming them, saying, yes, you're a man. You're a man. Oh, you're right. And we're getting them legally changed and all this sort of stuff. And remember, when they get, I was talking to a medical billing coder, right? So for whenever they have to make insurance claims, she says it's so complicated whenever they encounter a trans identifying patient who needs sex specific care, because technically they're not able to bill for sex specific care when the person has legally changed their sex marker from male to female or female to male. So you have these trans identified males who all of a sudden need prostate cancer screening. And how are you supposed to bill that? Because the insurance companies are like, why the hell would we pay for a prostate cancer screening or treatment for a female? And vice versa. We've had issues where these trans-identified females wind up pregnant, and then all of a sudden they're crying their eyes out about how stressed out they are because they're getting billed for the birth because their insurance is denying coverage, because they're saying, why would we pay for maternity care for a male? Kind of like, this doesn't make sense, and this is a ridiculous thing that we have allowed. Susie Glucksman says so many. Let's see. Susie Glucksman says so many of these TIFs think they are gay men. The dudes they are with must be laughing and saying, whatever, my dear, as long as he's getting laid out. And it's so strange to me. It's so true. And actually something we're going to hear from Danny is that she originally identified as a lesbian, and then once she started taking testosterone, said she was now gay and attracted to men. The same thing happened with Buck Angel. So I wonder what the deal is with that. Yay, Chloe Bear, good to see you. Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you canceled to come hang out with us. But definitely get it because self-care is important. All right, let's just take a look because this is all just something else.
So I've wanted to be a parent since I was 9 years old. Motherhood never felt appropriate, so I wasn't actively trying to get pregnant. I gave birth to Wilder at home, but I also gave birth to myself. Wilder's birth was so calm and grounding and beautiful and powerful that it really showed me what I'm capable of.
We want to extend a huge thank you to Nanette and Dane for bringing this episode of What's Underneath Birth and Postpartum to life. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to learn more about our partners and the special offers they have for you. So can you talk a little bit about what your style says about you?
I'm a new parent in postpartum, and so my style isn't what it used to be. About a few years before I had gotten pregnant with Wilder, I had started really becoming more comfortable and at home in my body. And I had started finding...
your style?
Yeah, I found my style. And so I'm really grieving that style, right? I would wear suspenders and button-downs at home because it made me feel good. I'm grieving the ability to do that because my body doesn't fit the mold that our society creates and cuts its clothing from.
Can't go? Do this. Fiber helps you poop, right?
It's almost as if she's going to go on to talk about how she finds her clothes in the men's department. It's almost as if men's clothing is tailored for men's bodies, and they weren't expecting that they would need to make maternity wear in the men's section. The kid's name is Wilder, not a surprise.
Maybe while shopping in the men's department. I have this love for my body, especially going through that pregnancy process as a non-binary person, post-medically transitioning. That really allowed for me to be a home for Wilder. And then I had Wilder, and postpartum depression and psychosis have...
Okay, first of all, just like honestly, can we talk about how cute this little girl is? Like how absolutely beautiful this baby is, and how heartbreaking it is to listen to this woman talk about what motherhood did for her. I had home births as well. Okay, and I had a water birth too, where I literally 2 water births where I reached in to the water and pulled my daughters up and put them, on my chest. And it's this like incredibly, it's this female experience that my grandmothers had, my great grandmothers had. It's this thing that connects me. And I talk about our cellular life begins in the wombs of our grandmothers. Okay, because our we develop our eggs in utero. Right? We develop the eggs in our bodies, all the eggs that we'll ever have, our future children, for those of us who will go on to become mothers, while we are being carried, gestating in the uteruses of our mothers. So it's like my daughter's cellular life began in the womb of my mother. My cellular life began in the womb of my grandmother, and so on and so on. It's this beautiful intergenerational thing of motherhood. And to hear her describe something, and it's like, had you just given yourself time to develop and to step into yourself as a woman, you could have forgone all of this heartbreaking just self-mutilation. And she's going to talk about losing the opportunity to breastfeed, something that she really, wishes she could have experienced. All what for? For some aesthetic? For some dumbass aesthetic? To why? Why? It's so sad, And it's like she seemed to understand the importance of stepping away from this technocratic like surgical, medicalized birthing environment, and having a very holistic, which is really a mother-centered birth experience, and how powerful that was for her. And it's like she still doesn't get it. It's fucking sad. You could have worn all of this shit without having to mutilate yourself and totally desecrate the body that you were given. This baby is so fucking cute too. Oh, this little girl is so cute.
really crept in and changed that relationship. It's covered it up in some ways. So I've just been slowly trying to uncover that self-love again that I had for my body while I was pregnant.
Can you talk about assumptions that people make about you based on your appearance?
Oftentimes people assume that I am a cis gay man, and it's never assumed that I gave birth to my baby. And it's always assumed that I am Wilder's father, which I am, but that Wilder has a mother, which they do not. But then also...
So this woman is saying it's assumed that I'm Wilder's father, which I am. Which again, it's like you can tell that she, but assume that Wilder has a mother, which they do not. First of all, yes, this child has a mother. Yes, this child has a mother. You're her mother. It's amazing that no amount of identifying or, transition or any of this shit that you did or any of this stuff that you somehow convinced other people to play along with has spared you from the biological and the female reality of what, why we have, like I said, why we have female bodies and what happens once you conceive. The consequences for sex for women are different and they are more serious than for men. And here exactly is a perfect example why. Because guess what? The man that she had sex with, the one night stand, his life did not skip a beat. The course of her life is now changed forever. It changed everything. That's the point. We bear the reproductive burden of the species. What don't you get, Danny, or whatever your real Danielle probably? What don't you understand? And again, it's like, how did that not give you... So I'll show you another clip where people were like, oh, didn't it give you gender dysphoria to be pregnant? You're like, oh, no, it actually gave me a gender euphoria. Huh? Like, make it make sense. You cut your breasts off for what? Please, help me understand, because I don't get it.
Also, there's this really big sense of feeling unseen. Like, I understand what mothers go through, the postpartum experience, and so oftentimes I feel unseen in that sense.
And when you were pregnant, what were those assumptions?
I feel unseen. I'm sorry. It's all about attention and these people needing just to be special and unique, and they're just chronically unique, and I understand what mothers go through. Yeah, because you're a mother. Again, it didn't spare you from single motherhood. It didn't, you didn't get to have, guess what, sweetheart? You didn't get to have the recreational sex the way men do and get to dodge responsibility. That's the fucking point. Changed your life forever. Forever.
The assumption that I got the most was that Wilder was planned and that I used a donor, which was not the case. But the other assumption that most people made is that it would cause and trigger a whole lot of gender dysphoria, which it didn't. It did the opposite. It created gender euphoria in a way that I've never experienced before. I still, when I look down at my tummy, I'm like, this is like home. This is my child's first home, and it reminds me now. I'm like, wow, in order for Wilder to learn how to love their body, I get to learn how to love mine.
This is I think one of the things that I hate the most about things that she says. So wait, Julius the Python said something interesting. He said, Britt, do you think that this whole trans thing amongst the older people is a result of the participation trophy generation growing up and realizing the real world doesn't give a shit about them or give them the attention they are used to, so they seek out any way to get attention, and trans just happens to be that? Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. It's you can be, anything that you want. No, you can't be anything that you want. You can be what is compatible with your skills and your natural disposition, and that you have a certain proximity to and that you put in the work for. If you work for something and you do whatever you can to acquire the requisite skills and things needed to become that, and then you're able to sort of access the opportunity, then you can become that. Can you become anything? No, of course not. But that shouldn't be limiting. That should be, encouraging, that it's like, find stuff that's within you, so it's not discouraging. That, wow, it's like this idea that like, it's like kids who will start things, or people who will start things, right? And anything can be easy right when you start at in the very beginning. Anyone can be a good beginner at anything. But then it's like, as soon as it gets a little bit tough and they need, they fail and they're not number one, or they lose, the first few times, and then they're like, oh, I give up. This isn't for me. This just isn't meant for me. It's like, huh? It's like, oh, because you just wanted to become like easy, where you already, it's like a bunch of people like millennials on who they don't want to do any sort of job because they're like, oh, well, these jobs aren't good enough for me. It'll be a bunch of like unemployed people being like rejecting jobs. Hey, Vanessa, I was just talking about you. I miss you. These jobs, or people are like, here, there's this job. They're like, no, that's not good enough. It's like, because they really feel entitled to having these like, highly visible jobs where they get a lot of like, recognition, and they get a lot of glory without like ever earning it. You know what I mean? They don't know how to earn something. They don't know how to have to go through adversity, or how to deal with failure and getting back up and like readjusting and having to work harder. They didn't, have never had to experience working so hard for something and still failing, still not getting it right. And you still got to get back up and figure, what am I not doing right? Do I need to work harder? Do I need to work smarter? I need to problem solve through this, and I need to keep going. One of the greatest gifts that we can give our children is not bailing them out when something gets hard, not allowing them to quit, because one of the best feelings, one of the best ways to develop true self-esteem in a child is not to give them a trophy that they didn't earn. It's to allow them the space and the opportunity to fail and fail and fail and fail and keep going until all of a sudden they finally fucking get it and they succeed. There is no greater feeling to finally succeed in something that you have failed at over and over again. And you had to keep fucking trying. You kept hitting a wall. You kept getting knocked down. You kept getting fucked up in the process. You kept feeling ashamed and embarrassed and watching other people step over you, and you dug in and you grinded it out and you fucking fought and clawed your way till you finally got through that door. That's how you build self-esteem in a child. You don't let them pamper themselves and say, well, I guess it's just not for me. Or, oh, I can't do it. Say, it's okay, honey. No, you don't have to put yourself through it. No, keep fucking going. You're not done yet. Anybody can be a good beginner. You're not done yet. Keep fucking going. Absolutely, I think that so much of this has to do with all of these kids thought that they were going to be like a celebrity. It's these parents who treat their kids like they're the center of the universe. That they're oh, you're the most special, you're, and all of it's unearned. And then exactly, Julius, it's like once, they get out into the world and you realize, no, you're not this, the center, you're not the sun of everybody's world. And then it's like, it's soul crushing to them. They've never had to earn any sort of recognition. It's always just been handed to them. And now it's like, oh God, and they don't know where to begin. They don't have any of that humility. Right? So it's like they've got to do all this weird shit to garner any kind of attention to feel, at peace again, because they were always used to just getting all of this sort of unearned just recognition. I know Vanessa's retired. It's very sad. I just wish we had do we have an archive of your stuff? I miss it. No, but I'm so proud of you, Vanessa, and I know that you're doing amazing things, and you're building your family and your life, and it's amazing, and I'm proud of you. I'm grateful for that.
A little bit about your journey.
Oh, and real quick, so here, I just want to repeat what she just said. Hold on, because it's really important.
this is my child's first home, and it reminds me now. I'm like, wow, in order for Wilder to learn how to love their body, I get to learn how to love mine.
So can you talk?
She says, in order for Wilder to learn how to love her body, I have to learn how to love mine. What worse example could you set for your child about self-love and self-accepting and honoring their body than by mutilating your body, by living a lie, by living as role play, LARPing as a man when you're a woman? How much more could you tell your female child that there is something wrong about being female, that there's only one sort of way to be female, and if you're not the right kind of female, you're not the right kind of girl, not the right kind of woman, and you don't relate to everything, then maybe you're not really a female. You're not meant to be a female, or God made a mistake, or you're born in the wrong body. What are you talking about? You have these mutilated breasts now that stand as a forever testament to how much you hated yourself, how much you hated your femaleness, how much your female anatomy disgusted you and made you uncomfortable. No, that's actually the worst possible example for teaching your daughter to not accept herself. Only in your rejection of your trans identity, only in your total disownment of your trans identity and acknowledgement of the damage have you done, only then can you begin to show your daughter what self-love and self-acceptance is. Once you accept yourself as a woman and a mother who went through a period of self-hate and self-harm, and that you bear the scars of self-hate and self-harm, and that you have always been a woman and none of these things ever made you anything but a woman who hated herself at one point, but who now appreciates the body that she was given because of this remarkable thing that it did, this incredible thing that it did that connects us with women. I mean, going through childbirth is a process that is ancient. There is sort of a body wisdom that our grandmothers experienced. I remember being in the middle of birthing my second son. It was my first home birth. And I literally had this vision of I remember it was my doula who we ended up working together, and she like whispered in my ear and she goes, "You're surrounded by every one of your grandmothers, all of your female ancestors. Imagine them in the room with you, and they're with you." And it was just this moment where I pictured that, and it was like, I'm going through what my grandmothers, my great grandmothers, we've all gone through this process. This process doesn't change. This process remains the same. I mean, there's some variations in the way that we give birth, but it remains the same. And it is an intrinsically, inherently female experience. It is something that connects us with the past. It connects us with the future. It's something that, I can guide my daughters through, my future daughter-in-laws if they ever choose to give birth, right? And I'll understand it already without having to know anything else about them, because it is a process that no matter what our names are, what pronouns we use, what sort of clothes we like to wear, what color we like, what sort of toys we like to play with, it's something that we all go through the same path. And it is female. Mother is female. God. Teach her how to love herself. Yeah, I'm sure your double mastectomy scars, again, a cancer treatment, that is a treatment that we give to cancer patients, is really going to teach her how to love her body. It's like, what are you talking about?
A little bit about your journey to becoming a dad.
Yeah, so I've wanted to be a parent since I was 9 years old. Motherhood never felt appropriate, so I wasn't actively trying to get pregnant. And Wilder is the result of a relapse. From the age of 6 to 12, I experienced sexual abuse from a family member. That experience has led me down a really dark path A lot of the way that my addiction and my disease played out was reliving that trauma.
Okay, so again, we see this a lot, especially with trans-identified females. Whereas trans-identified males are moving towards sexual objectification. They want to be sexually objectified. They want to be wanted the way that they want women, and that men typically aren't pursued or desired. They want to be pursued and objectified and sexualized in that way. Sexualize themselves. Whereas women want to de-objectify themselves, desexualize themselves. And for a lot of women, they want to escape the body that the sexual abuse occurred in. We can't do that. We can heal. We can never escape our bodies. And it's this idea that there's this separation between who we are and our bodies. Our bodies are who we are. It's not like, oh, there's me and there's my body. I am my body. My body is me. I am one unified, coherent whole. So are you, Danny. Vanessa V says the women all have had sexual trauma, varying degrees and different types, but every single one has experienced sexual abuse. I absolutely believe that. Unless it's lesbians, you know what I mean? I feel like the only other variation would be, lesbians with internalized homophobia who are just looking to expand on their sexual dating market. Honestly, their sexual market value, and sexual opportunities. Otherwise, especially these women who are having sex with men. I don't understand. There's nothing else that's logical.
Allowing people, specifically men, to use my body. I'm a survivor of bullying. I grew up in a really small town in the Midwest, and I came out as a lesbian at the age of...
John Emily transition vlog. If this is a man, when he had gay sex, why then did he have a female consequence that altered his life forever? The only reason we delineate and differentiate between the two phenotypes, again, human beings are a sexually dimorphic species that has two body types, phenotypical body layouts. I understand is male and female. It is for reproductive purposes. All of this other stuff about gender and personalities and all this other crap has to do with personality. And it has to do with a religious belief. It is a religious belief to say that there is some sort of essence of a person. And that essence can have a different gender or different sex than their biological sex. And that's somehow more significant and more relevant to their material reality than their actual biological sex. I understand that this is part of a religion that you adhere to. And I'm very, very sorry that you went ahead with vaginoplasty. What you have, sir, is not a vagina. Okay, what you have is a inverted penis. A vagina is more than just a fuck pocket for men. It is more than just something that you can allow men to insert their penis inside of. Okay? A vagina, a female vagina, is a very complex organ that is part of an organ system, a reproductive organ system that is exclusive to women. If this is a man in any in any way that makes sense, why then is he sitting with a child that he gave birth to out of his vagina? Why was that then a consequence of sex for him? Right? Because this is a man, right? your ideology, your religion, and I respect that it's your religion, and I guess I respect your right to hold those fantastical beliefs, are not based in any sort of material reality or in any way that matters. Okay? Keep it in your own church. It is not my religion.
12 years old. So I experienced a lot of bullying, specifically from the boys. Between that and my sexual abuse, I had a very negative connotation of boys. I didn't want to be a boy. I never felt connected to the identity of being a woman, but I absolutely never felt connected to being a man. It didn't occur to me until I was 25 years old that I could be neither, or I could be both, that I was non-binary. Prior to transitioning, I had only ever been attracted to women. And then I transitioned and I started to have this attraction towards men, but I also still acted out in my disease in this way that was really, really unhealthy with men. And so I had this like weird conflict.
Okay, all right. So sex addiction, I'm sorry. There's a lot. Sex addiction is not an addiction, okay? It's just irresponsible compulsive behavior. It's self-soothing behavior. But addiction, like actual addiction, something like opioid addiction, for example, causes structural changes in the brain. It literally causes an overgrowth of opioid receptors that demand that you fill them, or else you go into a severe withdrawal. I'm sorry, I don't believe in things like sex addiction. It's you probably have a lot of anxiety, and this is a very poor coping technique. Okay, what happens with actual addicts, they can't, it literally, their brain gets hijacked to the point, and we see it structurally. There's actual observable structural differences and changes in somebody who has, opioid addiction, for example, which is an actual addiction. It causes an overgrowth of opioid receptors, again, that demand, to be parked up with opioids, lest, your body starts to go into full-blown withdrawal. Also, your intestine has opioid receptors. That's why you start to have a lot of diarrhea when you're going in withdrawal. Okay, and your brain, and it's the amount of dopamine that is released when something like heroin enters the system is so much greater than anything found in nature. It's 1,000 times greater than an orgasm, anything in nature, than when you eat. Normally our bodies, dopamine is sort of like, it's the hormone that it's like the Pavlov's dog, okay, compound. All right, so dopamine, it classically conditions us, so that every time we eat, our brain will naturally condition us. It'll release a little bit of dopamine. So it's telling the rest of the brain, saying, okay, good, this is important. I need to eat. So, I need to keep feeling this again, so let me do it again. Okay, it conditions us. When you have something like heroin that's able to hijack the brain's system's reward system, it'll flood it with dopamine. So now it's the way that your brain can kind of create a hierarchy of what's most important is by how much dopamine it releases. So with food, it releases, dope. Like when you're hungry and you eat, oh, it's a lot of dopamine. When you have sex, oh, it's a lot of dopamine. When you have whatever, when you are hugging your kids, you get these little hits of dopamine. Whatever. It's training your brain that these things are important. When something like heroin hits your system, it releases so much dopamine. And it's so much more than what anything else that you do or anything else that you do in nature. It puts heroin at the very top of the list. That's why we can see mothers literally, ignore their responsibilities to their children. That's why we see addicts who will ignore taking care of themselves, eating, put everything second to getting high. Because it's literally hijacked your brain's, reward system to think that heroin is absolutely critical to survival. Okay, it's a hijacking system. And I know it's like, have a sex addiction. It's like these people are incapable of taking responsibility, personal responsibility for their poor coping mechanisms and poor lifestyle behaviors. That's what happened. Okay, and again, you were telling yourself that you were a man, and then my question is, was she so deluded that she had told herself and had been affirmed for so long that she was a man that she actually really forgot that she was actually a woman and will have female consequences if she has penis and vagina sex? This is not gay sex, that this is heterosexual sex with two fertile people that will result in a child and conception? Or was she thinking that, I've been shooting up testosterone for the past 8 years. The chances of me still being fertile are nil. Either way, when we muddle these terms and we lie to young people about this is, again, and I'll say it over and over again, Vanessa Vokey, who's in here, one of my favorite quotes that she said in her song, only perverts lie to kids about sex and human anatomy. Vanessa Vokey. And she's absolutely right. Only perverts lie to kids about sex and human anatomy. Why? Because then they don't understand. So we have a whole generation of kids who are growing up learning things like the gender bread and gender spectrum and demi boy and demi girl. None of it that does anything to protect them from anything. If anything, it's grooming them and making them susceptible to predators. Did she understand that she could get pregnant? How did this happen? No, you didn't have a sex addiction. You are just irresponsible and you were delusional. This is why, teaching getting mentally ill women like this so much praise for manifesting their mental illness is not a good thing. And we should be these women of all, who are on testosterone, most really need female specific sex education. Was she on birth control? Did she realize that she still needed birth control even as a trans man? I don't know. We'll never know. It's like,
one of the consequences from my final relapse was conceiving Wilder, and I've been sober ever since.
What happened to you then, being sober and being pregnant?
So I ended up getting COVID in March of 2020, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And
here's where she lies. And just so everybody knows, if these people will lie about something as fundamental as their biological sex, they will lie about anything. And right here, just look at the look on her face. Watch her face in a minute. She's lying. So she doesn't want to get called out for having her recreational drug use again, which she might be an addict. She might be a drug addict. It makes sense that these women, they get this rush from taking testosterone. They say it makes you feel like $1 million, and it's like you're shooting up with these drugs. That's absolutely drug-seeking behavior. But she's going to sit here and say how, I had been off testosterone for 2 months. And, it is such an amazing coincidence that they say you should be off testosterone for 2 months, at least 2 months at minimum before conceiving so that it doesn't impact your fetus or your child. And, wow, surprise, surprise. She just so happened to be off testosterone, which of course is a fucking lie. She was I would bet any amount of money that she was still on it and didn't stop taking testosterone until she found out that she was pregnant, which was 2 months in. She just can't bear to be accused of harming her child through her cosmetic, drug abuse. But let's listen to her lie.
I got really, really sick for a month. I started to get better, and within a week I started to get really, really sick again, and so I went back to the hospital. And I described my symptoms, and they're like, is there a possibility that you could be pregnant? And sure enough, there was.
What was your pregnancy like?
It was terrible. It was horrible. It was hard. I went to the emergency room 5 different times during the pandemic alone as a pregnant trans person. I had some really negative experiences, like doctors refusing to believe that I was pregnant and not asking me questions directly, snickering about me while in their room with me.
So how did you cope?
I cared for my body. I cared for my child. The self-love and the things that Wilder has taught me through carrying them and being pregnant, that's what helps me stay sober.
Okay, another thing that she does that's totally fucked is she refers to her daughter, this beautiful little girl that she gave birth. I mean, this little girl is gorgeous. This is a beautiful baby. She's so sweet. I've watched so many videos. Like, she's perfect. You are so lucky to have a perfectly healthy child. Again, this is a 38-year-old woman who's been shooting up testosterone for the better part of a decade, and you are very, very lucky to have this gorgeous little girl. And the fact that you dare sit there and call this child a they them, and then claim that you're going to teach your baby about self-love. You have already begun to teach her that there is something potentially wrong with the little girl that she is, the female child that she is. And you've already proven that there's already probably something wrong, because you sit there and you call yourself a papa. I'm her daddy. I'm her father. How dare you? Leave this child out of your weird shit. If anything childbirth should have taught you, it should have been like, you know what am I doing? But I guess the attention is just too much to give up, isn't it? Because then who are you? You're just a mutilated woman, mutilated single mom who made a terrible decision to give her child no father, no family, no structure. You're barely making ends meet. And it's like, it's sad and it's horrific, and it's another reason also why we need to stop lying to women that women can have sex the way that men can with no consequences. No, we can't. No, we cannot. And that entering motherhood as a single mother is somehow empowering. You want to find out how not empowering it is? Watch more videos of this single mother and how on the verge of tears she constantly is, because she's by herself. This child deserves so much better, and so does she. You know, she needed mental help, not affirmation. Affirmation is the most cruel thing anyone could have done to this woman, was to affirm this shit. And you're putting her in danger, you're putting the child in danger. And that's why organizations like the American College of Obstetrician Gynecologists, shame on you. You are sitting here and affirming this, helping to create this, putting her in danger, putting this little girl in danger. Because guess what? As an obstetrician, you have two patients, the pregnant mother and the baby within. You failed both of them. When you sit there and say that it's okay, sit there and dope up on testosterone, and then oops, wind up pregnant. Because we're sitting there and affirming a delusion. How dare you? How fucking dare you?
Every day.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit about then the birth and all?
My birth was the exact opposite from my pregnancy journey. My birth was absolutely amazing. It was a spiritual experience. I gave birth to Wilder at home.
Your hair.
You know, and birth does that, you know, and we know that. And the thing is, it's beautiful about it, she had an unmedicated birth, you know, and when you're unmedicated, your body is able to prime your brain with all of the hormones of childbirth, and it changes us structurally and forever. And it bonds us to our babies. It connects us to our bodies. When women are allowed to actually be present for their birth and they're not all drugged up. And again, this isn't to like, my first baby I had in a hospital, and I had an epidural, and I had all of these things. And it was because of that I was like, something is wrong here. It really was not. Something was off, because I stayed home for a long time and I labored. And by the time I got in, I was 8 centimeters. And they're like, oh, wow, you've already gotten so far. You have to dilate to 10 centimeters to begin pushing the second stage of labor. I had dilated to 8. And then I got there and they were checking me and asking me questions. I had to put on this stupid gown. I couldn't drink water. They're strapping me to a bed. My anxiety's going through the roof. I have strangers coming in and out, chit-chatting with me, making little jokes in the background. And I'm like, all I want to do is go home. My labor stalled out for 5 hours. I sat at 9.5 centimeters, between 9 and 9.5 centimeters dilated. I had a cervical lip, and it's like my body wouldn't keep going. Why? Because my system was so flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and those are analogs of oxytocin. They'll block oxytocin. Oxytocin is what our body produces to put us into labor and to create uterine contractions. Okay, so this is not an attack on any sort of woman. It's that we are the options that we have for birth in this country are terrible. And it is this, it's like a fucking conveyor belt that they throw women on. and we leave, and then they're like, here, take your baby, go home and figure it out. After you're traumatized, you've been cut open, you've been drugged up, you're hardly, there. It's just like, and this woman actually had the wherewithal to have a physiological normal birth and allow her brain the full beautiful hormonal priming that happens, that makes us connected to our bodies, makes us connected to our births. Unfortunately, she had cut off her breasts, which would have helped continue that process had she been able to have full breastfeeding. But she had that, and you can see how much it's changed her. If somebody just like God protected her and shielded her from gender ideology long enough to get to this point, how different her life might have been. She might not have been, being interviewed by everybody, because unfortunately, just being a regular old mom is so devalued in our society, even though it's the most fucking precious starting point. I mean, it is the wellspring from which all of humanity comes. It is honestly, it's the thing that we should be protecting, nurturing. If we can protect and nurture the literal source of humanity, don't you think humanity might start to heal? If we can protect the source from which it springs? But no, they failed her. They lied to her. They said that this was a good idea. And she missed out on some really critical parts, and now she's a mutilated body, and unfortunately they reaffirm it all the time, because this is a lonely woman. It's sad. She lives at home in a house with her and her baby, and you can see she's on the brink of tears all the time. She is alone. But the only time that she's not alone, the only time that she feels seen, is when they sit there and they offer her these interviews to talk about being a trans papa, a papa. Of course she wants to cling to this identity. Of course she wants to cling to this identity. It's the one thing that makes people interested in her and her child. Probably makes money off of it. For the first time she's seen and cared about. Holy shit. That's why she was probably a sex addict, because she didn't feel seen or cared about. She never healed the original sexual trauma. Oh, wait, hold on.
Wilder's birth was so calm and grounding and beautiful and powerful that it really showed me what I'm capable of.
Oh my God, cheese and onions, you are so right. Single moms are so vilified, demonized, and it's like, I do think that we absolutely need to discourage single motherhood. I think that it is absolutely dangerous to mothers and children, but we need to protect single moms. We need to protect and insulate single moms and support single moms while being real about what single motherhood is. But single dads, they're seen as like the hero. It's like, oh wow, a woman took off. Oh, it's almost like a dad stepped up for a kid that really like shouldn't have been his responsibility, and he's like a hero. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then she gets to see, it's like this double whammy of not only being like a single trans dad, but a single dad. And boy, we love how, them doing the bare minimum. Man, single dads can do the least and get the absolute most fanfare.
So let's hear about your journey, postpartum journey.
So at 6 months postpartum, I decided to restart my testosterone. I went off of it for 2 months before I conceived Wilder, and I was off of it for the duration of my pregnancy and up until 6 months postpartum.
Okay, another thing really quick, and I hate to keep interjecting. So, of course, she lies and said that she was off for 2 months. That's why she stuttered. Of course you weren't. Of course, just so happened to have been off. Like, fuck off. But it's like, and we sit there and say again, these women who are so delusional and again addicted, and like just abusing these drugs. Why do we trust that they're not going to be abusing these drugs during childbirth? Like, we really think that some of these women, we just got to keep them at their word. It's kind of just saying like an alcoholic or something like, oh, don't use alcohol. No, I'm sure some of these women, like, once they start to see that, the effects of the testosterone are starting to wear off and maybe the estrogen's starting to come back in and what that causes them, and like, well, let me just take a shot real quick, so I can get some of it back. There's a disconnect. They're so disconnected from their bodies. We really think that they're going to be so hyper vigilant around their babies if they're already this disconnected from their bodies. No.
And I went back on it, and that's also around the time that I started noticing an increase in my anxiety and my depression. And after being on testosterone for a month, I thought that the two were connected. And so I stopped testosterone without talking to my doctor. I just stopped it. But those feelings of anxiety and depression kept getting worse, and other things started happening. Around 11 months is when the intrusive thoughts really started creeping in.
You were having thoughts about harming.
Yeah, so I was having intrusive thoughts about harming my child. This person who I love more than anything in the entire world. How could I be having those thoughts about this person who I've never loved anything or anyone more than?
Okay, you know what single dads don't deal with? They don't deal with postpartum depression and psychosis. You know, it's also a female experience, an exclusively female experience. Postpartum depression and psychosis. Why? Because of the hormonal tumult that happens in our bodies. You know what could have protected her from postpartum depression and psychosis, or helped to reduce and reverse and combat the effects? Breastfeeding. Prolactin. When you breastfeed your child, you have a surge of oxytocin, which is like a feel-good hormone. Had she had the opportunity, another thing that's so sad is because she had this double mastectomy but still wanted to have, natural breastfeeding, she went and got a bunch of donor bags of breast milk that she has in the freezer. And so every time that her baby cries, she's got to get up in the middle of the night, go downstairs, thaw out a bag of milk, clean out a bottle, because you can't just put it, in a dirty bottle, feed the baby, sit up and feed the baby, hold the bottle, make sure the bottle's being held properly, put everything away, go back to bed, and do this upwards to, between 8 and 10 times a day, multiple times throughout the night. Okay? You know what exacerbates the mental, what can help harm the mental well-being of a new mother? Is having to do all that extra unnecessary work. Had she had her breasts, she could have had a co-sleeping situation either in the bed, which I think is fine. Unless you're on some heavy drugs, there's really no reason that you can't sleep next to your baby. Whatever. People don't agree. Or put a bassinet next to your bed. You hear the baby cry. This is what I did. I co-slept with all my kids. So if they would even move, I would literally just be half asleep and just like pop them on my boob, breastfeed. And then I would literally fall asleep while they were breastfeeding. And I would wake up and my tit was almost always out. And the baby would be passed out, next to me. And we'd be asleep. And I would have been breastfeeding through the night and not even really having to wake up. Because it became like an automatic process for me. But because she had a double mastectomy, not only did she lose the opportunity to have, this preventative, this thing that is designed to prevent postpartum depression. Breastfeeding is a protective factor against postpartum depression because of the hormones that it stimulates in our body. But also creating all these extra unnecessary steps that add burden to the life of a single mother. And it is heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. I love co-sleeping too. I miss it. I do not let my kids in my bed at all anymore. They're like, can we sleep with you? I'm like, hell to the nizal. But I miss it. I miss when they were little. I wish I could have another baby. I can't, so I can talk about that. I'm in menopause. I want another baby. I'll never have another one. But I need somebody close to me to have a baby so I can just hold it. I miss it. I used to breastfeed the babies who were, when I was working in the Philippines, well, sometimes we would have mothers that would give birth. So I was pregnant and I was still breastfeeding my older son. And we would have mothers that would give birth at the birth center. And then we had an adjacent orphanage because some of the mothers were either too poor to keep their babies, so sad, or just couldn't keep their babies or whatever because, abortion was super illegal and so was birth control. So we had quite a few mothers surrender their babies to the orphanage. And so there was me and another lactating mom, and we used to breastfeed the babies who would come over. And it's so helpful because they really benefit from the antibodies, that are protective against diseases and whatever. We were in a tropical environment, and so I have a bunch of milk babies, and I miss it. I miss them. Anyway, breastfeeding should be within, it's 2 hours of birth, but yeah, I mean, it's the golden 2 hours. That's when 2 hours after birth, a baby is so alert and able to do a natural breast crawl. They actually have this natural ability. It's amazing. You almost don't have to do anything, and they will, if you give them time, they can find and even latch themselves. It's like we're always in a rush because why? They need to get the room out to the next person. You're on a conveyor belt. They're just trying to move you along. That's why stay home. Be supported with people that can actually fucking take good care of you and prioritize your needs. Your needs are the only thing that matter when you're at home. They don't need to, we need this room for somebody else. Sad.
In this being. And I reached out to a friend, thank goodness. And so she came and got me, and I went to the hospital. I received diagnosis and medication for postpartum psychosis and depression, as well as ADHD. So when I got out of the hospital, I went home, but things were very different. Wilder had their own room and sleeps in their own room. One of the things that I changed is going back on testosterone, because after talking with my doctor, we came to the realization that it probably wasn't the testosterone that was causing those things. It was the postpartum depression and psychosis. I'm noticing like my facial hair is coming in, my voice is starting to drop again. So I'm noticing some of those things that bring some comfort, some gender euphoria are starting to fall back into place now that I'm on the testosterone, and it's really helping. So in the last 6 months, I've really been skyrocketed into this path of healing. That's looked like having a therapist. That's looked like having medication that I take on a regular basis. And it's been profound. It's been amazing. I no longer experience the symptoms that I was experiencing 6 months ago, which I feel absolutely blessed for. The biggest thing is I'm taking care of myself just as I would my baby, because I knew that if I...
So there is such a mental health crisis for new mothers in this country, and it doesn't have to be this way. It's because we're over medicalizing birth. Women are being traumatized during their births. They're ignored during their pregnancies. They're having to work, outside of the home up until the last possible minute. They if you have if your company has over 200 employees and they're covered by FMLA, your job is held for you for 6 weeks, not with pay, don't get it twisted, but you're allowed to come back to your job after 6 weeks, which is insane. And anybody who's had a baby knows that a 6-week baby, that is not enough time. That baby is still fresh out of the womb. That's when you should just be getting up for the first time. It's so cruel what we do to mothers. And this is why I'm calling on feminism to actually learn about the needs of mothers and prioritize them. My God, to some extent. It is fucking cruel. And we wonder why these moms are depressed and stressed out. And we can't survive now without 2 incomes. We need to have, we have to have 2 incomes, and moms are getting dumped right back into the workplace and then rushing back, having to pump at work, and other people are taking care of your baby and you're getting disconnected. And it's like, we're creating the situation where, more and more women are entering mothers, just as without any support. We've destroyed the extended family unit. So now it's just like we have nuclearized families, which is an absolute tragedy for mothers and their children. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for everybody. We wonder why these women are so stressed out and why they're facing crisis levels of postpartum depression and psychosis. Why mothers are getting hooked on heroin and things like that. Yeah, what a surprise. And insane rates of alcoholism now from new mothers. What a surprise.
I wanted to show up as the parent that I've always dreamed of being, that I knew that I can be, but I had to change things.
As a dad, what makes you feel the most vulnerable?
I think one of the ways that I feel the most vulnerable with Wilder and as they grow is showing them that they're not alone in the world, that there are a lot of seahorse babies I get emotional thinking about it because there's this really big, beautiful, vibrant community of trans and non-binary people who have carried and given birth.
Oh, God. It's like I want to make fun of her, but, like, I'm starting to have so much, like, compassion for this woman. And it's like so many people failed her, and it's like she's just clinging to this special identity so that it'll make her special, so that maybe somebody will care about her and this beautiful baby that she grew. There is nothing more heartbreaking for me, and I've cared for a lot of moms who had to leave horrible situations, and I know it's like, despite knowing that it's the most beautiful moment of your life, not being able to share that with the person that you created that baby with, that hurts. I don't care what anyone says, it hurts. It hurts to not have family around you who are celebrating this new addition to the family, this extension of the sort of like clan, to not have people around you being like, wow, like you brought such fortune to us, by bringing this new branch of our tree, our family tree. What a beautiful, profound thing, knowing everything that you have to sacrifice to get there. I know that hurts. And so when it's like you can cling to this special identity so that maybe you can, garner some of that attention back that she rightfully deserves, it's sad. God, it's sad. And like, I know, I feel that she loves her baby. Like, and I feel that she's connected to this experience, and it's like, how about we teach moms that they can and women that like they matter without having to be this extra layer of like a special, identity to fucking get some attention, to get some love, some community. Fucking sad.
What advice would you give your pre-father self?
Be ready to make mistakes. And that it's okay to make mistakes. And that a postpartum plan is as, if not more important than a birth plan. My advice would have been to create even more support for myself in my postpartum journey as I did in my birth process.
What is your favorite part of your body?
I love my hands. As an addict, I have the responsibility to lend a hand.
Here we go. The necessary, because again, getting undressed, because even as a trans man, she's not spared from the objectification. It's even like, in art, we love the nude woman. It's always, the nude woman on display in your body, even after, cutting herself up, is not exempt from sitting here and being objectified, and that's somehow empowering or whatever. And it's like, oh my God. And she's so another thing I wanted to talk about, she talks about trying to get back on testosterone 6 months or after. Well, she changes it a lot, because she said in one interview she said it was 2 months after she gave birth, and in this interview she's saying 6 months after she gave birth that she tried to get back on testosterone. And we know that testosterone makes mothers very aggressive. So if you can only imagine that after the hormones of childbirth, which have you all over the place, and then adding testosterone to that, she said that she became like really, really agitated. Like, we know that testosterone does that. It makes people aggressive, and was being like really like irritable towards the baby and things like that. And it's dangerous. Telling newly postpartum mothers, who I feel like up to 3 years postpartum should be nowhere near testosterone. They should be near testosterone, period. But especially during a postpartum period, that's dangerous. That's a recipe for danger for mother and baby.
To other addicts and alcoholics in need. So they're also a form of connection. Yeah, my hands.
So how do you feel about the parts of your body that have changed from pregnancy?
Oh gosh, like at the beginning is like, what is all of this extra stuff on me? And then I realized actually this tummy here, this is the tummy that housed my baby. And how can I not love a body that is home for somebody else?
Hey Geek Girl, good to see you. Just wanted to say hi.
And what?
Oh, there we go. It's like, it's making me want to cry. Like, I'm literally getting I'm getting tears in my eyes just listening to her, because it's like, No amount of identifying has exempted her from this experience, this tragedy that so many women we have totally decimated the village. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to mother a mother. It takes a village to create get a mother and a baby off to the best possible start. And it's like we have this, we have a whole lot of quantity, but there's not quality. If we protect and invest in each and every mother and child, then we probably won't just be like mindlessly popping them out. We can sit and think and take great intention with the children that we create, the bonds that we create, the families that we build, and see each child not as a burden on the earth, but as a beautiful contribution and an opportunity for beautiful things that this child is going to bring to the earth, rather than just mindlessly, fucking each other and then just dumping kids out and wrecking mothers in the process, treating it as this like precious and profound and deeply serious thing. Maybe we can start to heal. Maybe then we won't be having things like overpopulation and overburdening our ecosystem. When each child is thoughtfully considered and conceived and brought in, and each mother is then, again, revered as this precious being that is able to give these gifts with great thought, not just, I fucked somebody one night and oops, and whatever. I went and I didn't have to actually go through the process of childbirth because, I just got hooked up to a bunch of drugs and I practically wasn't even conscious. And this is not criticizing the mothers who do get over medicalized. It's the systems that over medicalize women, and it disconnects us from what's happening to us. It's important to go through childbirth and be present for it so we can feel how fucking massive and monumental it is, so that we approach it with great reverence. And so it also, one thing about women going through the pain of childbirth and what, the sort of intense feeling that creates in us physically, it also calls upon people who are supposed to love and take care of us to come and serve us during this time. It calls on them. It's like you can't just go through childbirth alone. So it calls on people to surround you and take care of you and actually be actively participant in helping you feel comfortable, helping you bring this baby earthside. It is so much easier to just hook a woman up to an epidural than everybody can just go hit the snack machine, go on their phone, and you don't have to really pay attention to her because now she doesn't have as many needs. She's just out of it. Doesn't matter, but when you don't when you actually have to sit there and work with a woman through something and help keep her comfortable, help be there for her, that's the beginning of building that sort of symbiotic relationship. Fucking just oops.
Greatest gift.
Why is she getting naked? Why?
Self-love.
Why is this? Oh God! Why is this
1000%
necessary?
Self-love. I have a dimple chin that people used to call a butt chin, and I used to hate it. And then I gave birth to this baby who has the most delicious dimple chin I've ever seen. And all of a sudden, I love my dimple chin. For the first time in my life, I love my dimple chin.
Why is she getting
That's
naked?
the kind of self-love that Wilder has taught me.
Why in your body, in your journey, in your skin, why is it a good place to be?
Because it's soft, and it's comforting, and it's welcoming. I'm exactly who I'm meant to be. I wanted to give birth as a papa, as a dad, because I wanted to feel at home in my body. Because the more insecurity that I feel, that energy my child is going to pick up on. The more comforted, at home, safe in my body that I feel, that's going to allow me to be more of that for my child. So I knew that, I wouldn't be able to chest feed my child. But you know what? Wilder has had donor milk for 16 months, has been fed breast milk from other people's bodies, even though I haven't been able to produce. And that's okay.
And how unnecessary is this then? Now we're donor milk is supposed to be for women who have babies who are in the NICU, who are having medical issues and their breast milk is not properly coming in. Women who have multiples who just aren't making enough milk for whatever reason, or women who get very sick or injured. and aren't able to, breastfeed at that time. That's what donor milk is. Do you know donor milk is already such a limited resource? And to sit there and it's like, okay, so I decided to cut my breasts off. Or it's for mothers who had breast cancer and had mastectomies, double mastectomies for a real reason. And still, go on to, thank God, recover and then have a baby. And the community comes together to give that mother donor milk. And it's like, we're cutting these women's breasts off. And then we can just, hit up the community of women who didn't do that and get it from them. And it's like, and it would have been so good for her to breastfeed. Again, breastfeeding is not just beneficial to the baby, it's beneficial to the mother. It helps stabilize the mother's hormones. It also helps stop the mother's bleeding. It prevents, it helps the uterus contract back down to size. There's so many. Another thing is it helps moms lose weight. It helps moms start to, bring their, body mass back down, because we need to gain weight to sustain a healthy pregnancy. We need to put on those extra pounds and calories and extra fat. And then after we have our babies, breastfeeding helps take a lot of that fat off. I lost a lot of weight when I was breastfeeding. It's important. There's so people, we totally, it's like we forget how dangerous being obese actually is and how bad it is as a new mom. But it's not good for you.
Okay, it hasn't impacted my connection with Wilder in any way, but it's impacted my connection with myself. Giving birth in my
Why is she
correct
naked?
gender identity and the place that feels most right and at home for me was the best path to take and was the way that I wanted to give birth. Regardless of what society says, right? I needed to feel as grounded and at home in my body as possible, and that is as my non-binary self.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
That was really, really
Beautiful.
Whoa. We want to extend a huge thank you to Nanette and Dane
Wow.
for being this episode.
Wow, wonderful, beautiful. Let's see, did they leave any of the comments? No, of course not. Of course. Oh wait, there are comments. Let's see what people say. Hold on. Beautiful. Whoa, stunning and brave. Yeah, you endangered your child by it's like, so what are we applauding here? Recreational drug use and some bizarre cosmetic surgeries? Like, super confused. Let's see. I love how Danny talks about intrusive thoughts. I feel like we never speak about how genuinely terrible and heartbreaking they can be, especially to the person experiencing. Okay, great. Might seem weird, but my favorite part of this vid was when Danny slides Wilder off their back. It's so seamless and familiar. I feel like a glimpse of... I used to do that. I used to carry my kids on my back. I baby wore my kids. And it's true. She is in every way a mother. I believe she's a good mom in a lot of ways. I really do. I believe that she's fucking mentally ill and should have gotten help first. But you can see, like... But this is something that happens with mothers. Dads don't, it's just, there's this like body connection that we have with our children that dads don't have, and they have to like, sort of learn it, but it's not this like, I don't know. All right, hold on. There's like another video I need you guys to see. Let's see how long we've been on the stream for. Oops. Hold on. Okay, good. We have some time. Danny. I try to keep these under 2 hours because then they will upload to Odyssey. Okay, here we go. This one shows some of the actual birth. So let's take a look. The birth was... So anyway, so there's a... and I was... So somebody told me that I guess during her birth... If I say his, just ignore me. During her birth that her penis, her phalloplasty exploded. She actually never had phalloplasty. She's only done testosterone double mastectomy. I've seen like the censored videos. So there was like a rumor that like her rat dog had exploded, and that's actually not true. I did check and I verified. Thank God, because they do these like not. Oh, another thing, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but have you noticed that these TIFs, these trans-identified females, really don't like to call themselves men? Like, they don't insist that they're men to the extent that trans-identified males do. They always call themselves trans-masculine. Like, even Danny says that he's trans-masculine and she's trans-masculine and she is non-binary. It's like, because I think that they know how stupid it is, and whereas like men are so much more brazen in their just, like it just entitlement that they can, of course I can consider myself this, I can do what I want, like it's like women almost like know that it's stupid. Let's see. Susie Glucksman says, another evil thing is they insist children will off themselves if they don't transition. But here's a woman doing all woman things and she's totally alive and well within her gender dysphoria. Yeah, of course. I said, oh, it was Vanessa who said the fallow exploded. Well, that's what somebody had told me. Somebody told me that too. I don't know like where we all started that, but no, thank God. Yeah, they have imposter syndrome, S says, yes. Rad femme housewife, turban, weed, priest is interesting. I feel like this is all just stuff she says at parties and they all nod meaningfully and that none of what she says means that. And she cries constantly. And clearly has a lot of postpartum issues, like very clearly. Max, you do not pee in here. I'll tell you what, buddy. Do not pee in my office. Okay. He looked like he wanted to pee. Alright, here we go. Good Lord. Oops.
Baby's happy.
Sorry. Oops.
It's my baby's heartbeat. I wondered as I became more at home with my masculine body if that would shift my desire to carry my own child, but it didn't. It just made me want to have a baby even more.
I'm sorry, and this might sound so mean and petty, but she has like really narrow upper teeth. So like I hate how my teeth are like, because like I had braces and I had like the expander and stuff like that or whatever, and but it's like so it's like I wish instead of investing in a double mastectomy, which served no purpose to your life, it's like if you were going to do something cosmetic, I really wish you would have just expanded your upper palate so it's not like, because when she opens her mouth it's this like really narrow little like lowercase n, and it's so petty, and I know people are probably like what the fuck, but it bothers me. Should have just done that.
Currently, there is no data about how many transgender people give birth in the U.S. each year. For Brute, I'm taking you to meet with Danny Wakefield, a trans-masculine single father who gave birth to his baby Wilder 8 months ago. Though he won't go into details about how exactly he conceived, Danny says giving birth to Wilder changed his life for the better.
Trans-masculine. Okay, this baby is so gorgeous, but I am like, get your baby off the internet. Get your baby off the internet. No, lower jaw doesn't bother me as much as upper. It's like, I know I'm being petty. It doesn't bother me I'm just saying, it's like if she's already gonna like spend all of this money on like cosmetic stuff, at least do something that like, I don't know, personally would make me happy. She should have thought about what I think and consulted with me. This baby's gorgeous. Get this kid off the fucking internet. If you're gonna sit there and showcase your bizarre and talk about you having one night stands and all of this other kind of stuff, I remember like I've had like 2 people somebody who asked why I never show my kids. It was an instant block. Anybody who asks to see what my children look like on here, I'm blocking you. It's weird. Why in the fuck do you need to see what my kids look like? Oh, yeah. Luna C says there's a suggestion that TIFs should be able to keep taking testosterone during pregnancy for their mental health. The possibility of issues with the Department of Kid is gender normative. Yeah, and apparently they're saying that, because the concern of taking hormones during childbirth can harm like sexual development, like genital development, so cause like disorders of sexual development. And they're like, that's just cis normative to want, like children's genitals to develop normally and for their, sexual reproductive system to develop normally. So why do we even need to take that into consideration? It's like, this is how sick it's getting. This is why the American College of Obstetrician Gynecologists is so sick for supporting this. And they need to be stopped. They're responsible for this.
Wilder.
This baby is so
This is my
cute.
miracle baby. You stand on Papa's tummy? Jump around. Jump, jump, jump around. So there's a few myths that I learned when I first transitioned. One of those was that testosterone possibly makes you infertile, and that 2, you couldn't get pregnant well on testosterone. And both of those are...
So that's what it is. I think she really thought that because she was taking testosterone, she couldn't get pregnant. And they're not asking a lot of these questions because she's probably ashamed that she's out like sleeping around, is probably having unprotected sex. And I wonder if she's getting female screening. Okay. That's what it was. She thought that because she was on testosterone, she couldn't get pregnant. She said, there's a lot of myths. Yeah, meaning this is what you thought. Yeah, not allowed to want good health. No, it's transphobic to want your baby to not have genital deformity. That's transphobic, Shannon. It's like, it's, yeah, good, protecting children against, deformities and teratogens is totally transphobic and cis-normative. Cis-heteronormative.
False. I wasn't planning on having a baby. I've always planned on having a baby, but I wasn't actively trying in the moment that I had Wilder. Actually, I haven't shared parts of that story yet, because parts of that story are for Wilder to share, but...
Thanks, honey. Wait, Wawa has...
God, how much of course we can monetize this video. But we got to keep people like Exelanzic and Vanessa Voki off, of course. Oops, come on. Yeah, it's really sad. Doctors lie. If you have a crib, don't use the playpen without protection. What do you mean? Oops.
When I found out I was pregnant, there were definitely some shock and like, okay, how am I gonna do? We're doing this. We're doing this, but like, also like, yes, we're finally doing this. And there was just no looking back.
One end. Whew. Baby burrito. Whew. My baby can crawl now, y'all. Holy cow. Wilder went from like not crawling to like speed crawling across every room. Like, no joke. I turn around and like 2 seconds later, I'm like, where is... Oh.
This baby is
standing
so
up against the couch. There's Wilder. Literally, like, I've entered a whole new level of parenting.
Vanessa V says, braces and palate expander club, rise up. Yeah, girl, like, get it, Like, it's something to, like, totally represent. I really wish somebody would have gotten this poor girl that. It's like if somebody, and I hate to say it, but I've always seen, and like, don't anyone take this the wrong way, but it was like my one cousin, her mom was like a drug addict and an alcoholic, and her dad was too busy with his like new wife to really care about her, and she had really, really bad teeth in terms of just overcrowding and really needed braces. And it was like, And she used to never smile in pictures because I knew it was because her teeth were so bad. And it just was sad because to me it was such like a symbol of like this girl just not being cared for. Like they had the money, they just didn't prioritize it. You know, the amount of money that her mom was spending on drugs and alcohol and her dad was spending on his new wife and new life and all this stuff. But no one cared about my cousin enough to get her some goddamn braces. You know, and maybe it's an example that no one cared about this woman enough when she was a kid to just care for her, take care of her, you know, do things for her that would help her self-esteem, help her feel better about herself. It's just sad, you know, because it creates like I mean, if you look at her, like her face, it causes like a deformity in her face somewhat, you know.
Hi. Someone called it a circus. I call it a show. Nothing makes sense anymore now that my baby is crawling.
This baby is so cute.
I thought life was hard before.
Prior to having Wilder, I was in a really dark place. That was me for homecoming my freshman year of high school.
Oh my God.
You can see how awkward.
Oh my God. Oh God, I've never seen like pre-transition pictures of her. That's crazy.
I felt.
What's it like looking back on that?
I'm like, how did I not know? I didn't realize until the age of 25. I'm like, oh, I didn't know because I didn't have experiences around me to help me.
You didn't know because it's not a real or organic thing, and no one told you about this new trend. That's what happened. Ooh, whoops, hold on. I hate when it does that. That's why you didn't know. Hold on, sorry, I gotta fix this. It's sad. It just seemed like this young woman who was not protected, and not protected to the point that she was sexually violated at a young age, never got the help that she needed, just was never cared for or treated as precious. God, it's just fucking sad. It really is. Please take care of your daughters, and please do not have children if you are not willing to fully, you know, protect and care for and give your kids everything that they need to become whole, you know, in themselves. You know, don't have kids and then just kind of like ignore them and let the world raise them. This is what happens.
Vocalize and know that there were things that I could do to help me feel more at home in my body. Yeah.
Some of the awkwardness is just like classic teenage awkwardness.
I think it could be, but I think that you don't get to be a classic teenager, right? An average teenager when you're trying to show up in the world as somebody who you're not. That takes up, for me at least, all of my capacity, even though I wasn't aware that that's how I wanted to show up. I knew that I wasn't in the right shell. I just didn't know what that meant.
They just need to justify it. It's like they're just coming up with any way to like justify why they did all this crap.
Hungry? Do you want some milk? Yeah, do you want some milk?
This
yeah,
baby.
let's do some milk.
This baby's
Okay.
so cute.
Come here. So Wilder eats all donor milk. It's 100% donor milk and has since birth. Huh. So 9 years ago, I had a double mastectomy. I had top surgery. I wanted to be able to give Wilder milk just as I would have from my own body, but I wasn't able to. I produced a few droplets. And I knew that that was...
And then when they're giving these double mastectomies to 12 and 13-year-olds, right? But that's all legit. 12 and 13-year-olds. Not knowing that one day that they might want this. And again, we already put such little little importance on breastfeeding to begin with, because again, it's a reason why we actually had to, if I was part of the movement to fight to allow breastfeeding images on Facebook without being censored, because of being like sexual or whatever. Breasts are not sexual, okay? And I'm going to make myself big for this. Breasts are not sexual. They are not sex organs. Breasts, that is a completely just like male patriarchal thing. That they just, I mean, this happened, I think, back in like the Victorian era where they decided that breasts were sexual and they're the sexual playthings for men. And it's like they wanted to sort of separate them from their function so that it could be the realm of, you know, something sexual for men, right? Breasts have one purpose. They are this nutrition source, the most perfect nutrition source for babies. They are to breastfeed our babies. That's what they're for. When we allow them to be sexualized, when we allow them to be seen as like the sexual playthings for men, I've had to sit there and work with a lot of women who said that they didn't want to breastfeed or they didn't feel comfortable breastfeeding because they felt like they'd somehow be sexually violating their baby and it felt too sexual for them and it was just awkward, or they couldn't comfortably openly breastfeed because they didn't want a nip slip or they didn't want someone to see their breast. Again, it is not natural for us to equate breasts with sex. They're not sexual. They're wholesome. Okay? It's like we've got to like deprogram that, because the longer that we hold on to that notion and we are robbing babies of the opportunity to have the best start in life by getting the most perfect food, which is breast milk. We haven't been able to come close to synthesizing anything that comes even close to what breast milk gives to babies. Okay, and then also this bonding experience of being able to nurse. When we nurse, literally our brains are flooded with these hormones that help bond us with our baby. They protect against postpartum depression, you know, and it's like so many women are robbed of this opportunity. I had, one of my best friends who was a nurse, she got married to a man who had been previously married and who had a son from a previous marriage. The son was around 12 years old. Her and her new husband had a baby. And she ended up crying and calling me. This is when I was as a birth worker. She's like, please come over. I don't know what to do. I think that I'm losing my breastfeeding relationship. And I really helped her get off to a good start. I was like, why? She goes, I think I'm going to stop breastfeeding. I was like, whoa, I'm coming over. Like, don't let me come over and we'll talk about it. She was crying and she goes, she goes, my husband's ex-wife came over and saw me breastfeeding the baby, you know, their daughter, on the couch. And she flipped out because she said that she's like, the son, the 12-year-old, she goes, because he was in the house. She goes, how dare you breastfeed in front of my child? That is disgusting. How dare you cover up? What is wrong with you? Because she had really tried to have like a good relationship with this woman, would like invite her into their home. And she said that in her own home, where she was breastfeeding her own baby, her husband's ex-wife flipped out on her for breastfeeding her son's little sister in front of him. And she said that her husband didn't back her up. He was like, yeah, well, maybe you shouldn't, you should go in a back room. In a back room? And a woman said this to this woman? Are you kidding me? And I was like, whoa, that's how fucking far and insane. First of all, how about you let your son see what breasts are actually meant for? I made a point to breastfeed in front of my sons because I wanted their first impression of what breasts are and what a woman's body is to be its true and natural and wholesome purpose. I didn't want their first understanding to be, breasts are the property of men. That a woman's body is designed to be, you know, some sort of sexual gratification tool for men. I wanted them to know that breastfeeding was for babies, that breastfeeding is wholesome. They never ever saw breasts from the time they were little. They would point and be like, oh, milky, milky. And would point, you know, like sometimes you would see these like Victoria's Secret ads or something with like her boobs all propped up. He's like, oh, milky. Because they're not even processing that as something sexual. To them, it's just that's a mommy, and that's, you know, how she would feed her baby one day. How about you like not sit there and prime your son to be some fucking raging misogynist who sees, a woman's body as sex objects? Let him see what it's for. That women's bodies are sacred and they have a purpose and that go beyond just shit for men. Fuck. Oh God, it still makes me mad to this day.
It's going to be the case just because of this type of surgery that I had. Ooh, I want to find all the AMs and the daytime milks, not the PMs, Wilder. Okay, let's get these done.
Okay, you know what? It's going to be about 2 hours and I want this to be able to upload to Odyssey. We're going to watch this and I'm going to come back and we'll watch it together. I'm going to start a new stream. So come see me on the new stream. I know I said that yesterday, but I'm actually going to. All right. Like I said, I got to turn it off before it gets to 2 hours. Otherwise, it won't upload to Odyssey, and that's my backup. So come join me on the next stream. All right.